Hello, strategic management students. This is Fred David, professor of strategic planning at Francis Marion University in Florence, South Carolina. Thank you for joining in with me for about 20 minutes here. I'd like to talk with you about chapter 3 in the 17th edition of our strategic management textbook. We finished up chapter 2 on vision mission a while back, and now we're into a very important chapter 3 here. Actually, I see on page, hope you're having a good day today. I see on page 64 here, first page in chapter 3 of the 17th edition. You see in the top part of that strategic management model there, that the area that's shaded white that says external assessment, chapter 3. I think you probably realize now this model will appear in each chapter of the book, and the focus of the particular chapter will always be in white. Also notice a vertical line there between the external assessment, the focus of this chapter 3, and the internal assessment, which will be the focus of our next chapter 4. That vertical line there is indicating that you actually, companies perform both the external and internal assessments simultaneously. It's not like one needs to be done before the other. But this chapter 3, external, the word external is meaning anything the organization or company cannot control in terms of the economy, the competition, technological trends, demographic trends, political, legal, governmental trends. There are important factors external to the firm as opposed to internal, which we'll look at in the next chapter, that the firm in developing an effective strategic plan will need to capitalize, take advantage of key opportunities, and avoid and mitigate the impact of external threats. And it's going to be important, as you will see, to prioritize the relative importance of these factors and to be specific with them, quantitative with them. Vagueness, let me just let you know, vagueness is disastrous in doing strategic planning and in developing a comprehensive strategic management project in the capstone course. So we'll need to conduct some research. This chapter itemizes particular places on the internet that the authors and I, co-authors and I of this textbook use most commonly to find the dollars, numbers, ratios, and percentages that are needed to be incorporated into the external factors that comprise, as you'll see in this chapter, an external factor evaluation matrix and even a competitive profile matrix, two widely used matrices that companies are using to help develop a good game plan. You realize we've talked already about how important it is to go into a major athletic contest or competing against a major rival every day. It's essential to have a outstanding game plans or strategic plan, if you will, because parity exists quite often, and sometimes this will be the critical difference between success and failure. And as you already know from our first two chapters, there's a right way to do strategic planning. And in this chapter 3, we lay that process out for you in terms of the performing an external assessment. So I'm glad you're joining. I'm thrilled actually that you're joining in with us with me here for about 20 minutes on chapter 3. And let's talk about a few issues, important key issues in this chapter. I see actually on page 67 here, it begins talking about the concept of AQCD. Please see in the middle of the page there where AQCD stands for actionable, quantitative, comparative, and divisional. And what it's saying there is it is saying that external factors, as you find them in various sources, including the Form 10K, IBIS World, other sources we'll look at in a minute on the internet and elsewhere, there's a need for these factors as you state them and include them in a matrix such as a EFE matrix, external factor evaluation matrix. These factors need to be AQCD. In other words, they need to be specific. It's almost useless to include a factor such as the economy is improving, or GDP is decreasing, or demographic trends are shifting. I mean, those types of nebulous vagueness is not going to be useful at all and going to undermine the whole strategic planning process. So I see on page 67, it introduces the key external forces, and there are really 5 of them. You see them there: economic, such as interest rates, the value of the dollar; social, cultural, demographic, and environmental. These are also there will be key factors impacting the company and the industry across those social, cultural, demographic, environmental that the firm cannot control by itself. Thus, the word external. The third one there: political, legal, governmental. Again, factors that a single company cannot control. So we're going to categorize external. 4 technological forces that also the firm by itself can't control. That's going to be another key external force that the company or organization will need to try to capitalize on, like the massive shift to online purchases and so forth. And we would need to determine, well, what is the percent? Is this up 6%, 16%, or 60% in our industry? The numbers matter in strategic planning, because based on the numbers, we're going to develop a strategic plan that we're going to bet our house on, that we're going to bet our employees and managers' billfolds and pocketbooks on. This is important stuff. So this page 67, introducing these 5 broad areas for external forces, as well as the AQCD concept, is just absolutely essential in developing an outstanding or excellent strategic plan. So I see on page 67, the term actionable is defined right there. Notice that word means meaningful and helpful in ultimately deciding what actions or strategies a firm should consider pursuing. That's what the term actionable means. Does it give us some insight in terms of what actions might be necessary for the firm to go forward with in the future? Is that factor written in an actionable way? You understand? That's okay. The second one there I see is quantitative. Obviously, here we're talking about dollars, numbers, ratios, percentages. As I told you a second ago, the numbers matter, because we're betting our house on a plan. It needs to be grounded in specifics. Ideally, quantitative factors to the extent possible. So factors that we'll determine and discover from IBISWorld, S&P Net Advantage industry surveys, Form 10K of our rival firm, and so forth. We need to frame those, state them in actionable terms and quantitative terms. And the third is comparative. These factors need to be stated in comparative terms. I mean, if I just say a current ratio is 1.6, of course, that'd be an internal, but let's just say the GDP of a particular country is 2.2. Well, my goodness, was it 1.2 the prior year or 4.6? So some comparative is essential to put this number in perspective. And that's why the third one there. So we have actionable, quantitative, comparative, and fourth, they're divisional. You know, arguably the most important strategy decision companies, organizations make every year is allocating resources across segments or divisions or units, you understand? And that's why this fourth AQCD, the D, is divisional. So we need some information to the extent possible in our factors as we state them. And we're talking opportunities and threats, folks. Well, you're going to see here in this chapter, what we need are 10 opportunities and 10 threats that you consider to be most important for the firm going forward in terms of developing a strategic plan. And those 20 factors total, let's just go with 10 opportunities, 10 threats. Each factor, to the extent possible, needs to be AQCD. So you can ask yourself, is the factor I've discovered or found here, is it AQCD? If it's not any of those, it's not going to be that helpful for the company in determining, making tough choices. You understand? Organizations cannot do everything they'd like to do going forward. They just don't know firm or company has enough money, not enough resources. So tough choices have to be made. And strategic planning, to be honest with you, is a prioritization process. But as we were getting back to this allocating resources across segments, that's a very important decision. That's why the fourth component there is D for divisional. As I'm looking over on page 68, I see there the authors and myself give you what we consider a high quality external factor. If you were going to include this factor, let's say in a list of opportunities, it says online retail grocery shopping grew from 12% to 16% in 2018. Online retail grocery shopping. So is that actionable? Yes. Is it quantitative? Yes. Is it comparative? Yes. Is it divisional? Yes. Because with regard to divisional, organizations, companies often segment their brick and mortar versus their online. So in a sense, this online information we've discovered here is divisional. You understand? And in a low quality external factor, one that would not be good to include, that's just too vague, would be something like consumers' average disposable income increased greatly in 2018. Well, what does the word greatly mean? I mean, nobody has a clue. Is it 2%, 15%, 25%? Is it 60%? If it really is 60%, we may need to really pursue some strategies to really capitalize on this factor. So the numbers matter. And we're going to try to state factors going forward in developing a comprehensive strategic plan, as I'm needing you to do in this course for some company of your choice, as you've probably already gotten started on with their vision, mission, and their proposed vision and mission and so forth. We'll want our factors to be, to the extent possible, A, Q, C, D. So what I see here on page 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, just gives you a little more detail about the forces themselves, these external forces: social, cultural, demographic, political, legal, governmental, technology, and of course the competition. We cannot control the competition. So what's the competition doing? Who is our major rival? What are they doing? Where are they located? How are they doing it? Those kinds of things can represent an important opportunity or threat. And again, as we discover information like that, from their Form 10K or online on various sources like Aller.com, Hoover.com, Morningstar, FinanceYahoo.com, I really like to use. We're going to try to state the factor, need to state the factor in terms of A, Q, C, D, so that the factor will be helpful for us in deciding among usually numerous alternative strategies that could benefit the firm. And like I say, no organization has enough resources or people or money to do everything that would benefit them. Some strategies we just won't be able to go forward with, and we need to know. So I see on page 73, one of the proponents of Michael Porter, Harvard University professor, he's developed a model here he calls Porter's 5 Forces model. I see it illustrated for you on page 74. And Michael Porter contends that there are really 4 areas that determine the rivalry in any given industry. And those, as you see there, are the development of substitute products, bargaining power of consumers, potential entry of new competitors, and bargaining power of suppliers. So I have 3 or 4 pages here that talk about Michael Porter's 5 Forces model, because it's included in every strategic management book I think I've ever seen in the last 20 years. And companies do like this concept. It's kind of a theoretical concept, but it's important to be aware and knowledgeable of this theory, so to speak. Now, folks, on page 77, if you don't mind, I'm starting to list here some sources, because sometimes I'll have students that say, my goodness, Dr. David, I can't find but 8 opportunities, or I can't find but 6 threats. Folks, there's over 100 opportunities, and there's over 100 threats that face any company or organization, even a small business in this city where Francis Marion is, Florence, South Carolina, at the intersection of I-20 and I-95. There, even for a small business in this town, there's over 100 opportunities and 100 threats. And we need to know what, in your view, are the top 10. I don't mean a wild guess. I mean, based on your research, your understanding of the situation, the demographics of external forces, what is the most important? Because prioritization is going to be a key. If we had unlimited funds, which no firm has, then prioritization wouldn't be important. But otherwise, that's why we're going to need to know what are the most important. So these sources I see on page 77 are some that my co-authors and I use regularly in helping companies actually do strategic planning. FinanceYahoo.com, Hoovers, Morningstar, Merchant Online. This one at Michigan State University, number 5, globaledge.msu.edu. That's an excellent one. They track industries and have it categorized in terms of what trends are happening, and they provide lots of dollars, numbers, ratios, percentages. So that's what we're after. We're after discovering some AQCD oriented factors that we consider worthy of including in our strategic analysis. And like I say, we might end up with 60 or 70 factors. We're going to distill them down to, let's go with 20, 10 opportunities, 10 threats. Nothing magic about 20, but companies widely use that number as a manageable list of what they consider most important factors. Again, exhaustive list is not as important as a prioritized list, because we already know that we can't do everything. So we need to know what, in the best judgment of the management team or top executives, what in their best judgment are the most important external factors. That's where we're going with this chapter 3. Again, I appreciate you joining in with me, because this is vitally important. And for a company or organization, if they can develop an effective strategic plan, it gives them major competitive advantages. And this chapter 3 on external assessment, that provides a nice foundation, coupled with chapter 4 coming up, and of course chapter 2 that we just finished up. I put there number 6 on page 77, the corporate website of companies. So you can glean a lot of nice information from the corporate website of your rival firms, and also their Form 10K. And of course, trade publications, newspapers, magazines, and on the internet. In fact, on page 78, I list for you our favorite, my co-authors and I, our favorite sources online to find 116 opportunities and 98 threats facing this company or organization. This is where we find this information. You see these on page 78, IBISWorld, LexisNexis, Merchant Online, Privco. You understand, privately held companies like Mars, let's say, that are privately held, it's difficult to find information. There's a website called Privco. It's the 4th one, or actually 5th one listed here, that gives excellent quantitative, specific information about the company and its industry and its rivals. So we'll use that for privately based companies quite often. But my favorite one, to be honest with you, among that list on page 78 is Standard & Poor's Net Advantage. So there I'm looking for the industry surveys. Now look, most college and university libraries provide these databases. These are expensive databases, and most colleges and libraries have them. And so you can go online at the library at your college or university and get into these databases and search by industry and find out what the numbers are associated with key trends across those forces: the economy, social, culture, demographic, political, legal, governmental, competition, and technology. So that's kind of where we're going here. I see on page 79, this concept of an external factor evaluation matrix is introduced. This is how we're going to assimilate information. If you've gotten familiar yet with the template, the Excel-based free strategic planning template at the strategyclub.com website that my co-authors and I, particularly Forrest, has developed, widely used by businesses. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses that actually use that template. And in that template, there will be an EFEM matrix. Now, please understand, that template does not go out there and gather the information for you. It doesn't do the thinking for you. That template is going to, however, take the mechanics out of developing a strategic plan, such as drawing vectors or drawing circles or doing calculations or multiplying across, things like that. So it's a fantastic template, and it does include an EFE matrix that I see starting to be talked about on page 79 and 80. So I see on page 79, it's talking about the need to have the 10 opportunities, 10 threats included in this matrix. And then on page 80, step 2, after discovering let's say the 20 factors, maybe we discovered 60 and 80, and we distill it down. We distill it down in our best judgment to a manageable number. Let's go with 20. I see on step 2, what we want to do is assign a weight to each of the 20 factors. Now, what is the weight? So the weight is going to sum to 1.0, as you see in this matrix when you take a close look at this chapter 3. And so the weight indicates, in your best judgment, what is the relative importance of each of these 20 factors to being successful in the industry. That's what the weight is. The weight is based on the industry. How important are these factors in your judgment? Based on your research and your study regarding your rival firms, what they're doing, where they're doing, and all. In your best judgment, you understand, with 20 factors, if you put a weight of 0.05 for every one of them, that is saying that in your mind, every factor is of equally important. Well, you might be sitting there knowing that some of these factors are indeed more important. So the weight column gives you the opportunity to include that in your analysis here as to the relative importance of these factors, because indeed, commonly, every factor is not equally important. So the weight column is based on the industry, and it's going to be something like a 0.05, 0.06, 0.08. You know, sometimes I recall at international case topic competitions, folks, judges will ask a student or presenting a strategic plan, well, what's the difference in a 0.08 and a 0.06, 2/100ths? How can you say you know the difference in that in terms of the importance? And you know what I heard one student answer one time, and the student said, in all due respect, a judge, yes, it's only 2/100ths difference, but mathematically 0.08 is 33% more important than 0.06. So basically we're saying that 0.08, by putting a weight of 0.08, that factor is 33% more important than a 0.06. And you can do the math in your head. That's what that student was trying to do there. I thought it was excellent the way that student replied in that regard, because these weights are not wild guesses. So they're going to be based on your study, your research. Like I say, the template doesn't go out there and look at these different databases like IBIS World or S&P Net Advantage. The template's needing you to do that. That's part of getting command of the company and the industry so you can develop a successful strategic plan. Folks, I see on page 80 here, step 3, assign the ratings. Now, whereas a rating for each factor, each external factor, whereas the weight was applied to the industry, folks, the rating is going to apply to the company. So the rating is going to be, in your judgment, how well is the company doing on this factor? Is the company doing really well on capitalizing on the opportunities and avoiding or mitigating the threats? If so, you give it maybe perhaps a rating of 4. So each rating is going to be 1 to 4, 4 being wonderful, 1 being terrible, in terms of how is the company doing on this thing. For example, let's say it's online grocery shopping is maybe increased from 12% to 16%. The weight would give, well, how important do you think that trend is overall? And the rating is going, well, how is your company doing on it? A 4 if you think the company's doing fantastic on it compared to its rival firms and so forth. A 1 if your firm is not doing anything, if they don't have a very well-developed website, if they're not really into online at all. So a weight and a rating. That's what I see going on page 90. Step 4, we're going to get the weighted score. That is, we'll multiply the weight times the rating. And then we're going to get the total weighted score. I see that on page 5. So there's a sample EFE matrix for you on page 80, on page 81. You see that? I'll tell you what, folks. Let me do a part 1 and a part 2 on this chapter 3, if you don't mind. I'm going to stop right here on page 81 with this segment here, and then pick right up with part 2 on chapter 3. It's a vitally important chapter, and I don't want to miss something right here, because this is going to lay a foundation for a really successful strategic plan. And like we've talked about, if an organization has a great strategic plan, they have a major competitive advantage over rival firms, and that's what we're striving to achieve in this course and with this chapter 3. So I'm going to join back with you in a few minutes, if you don't mind, and finish up this chapter 3. And starting on page 81. Appreciate you joining with me. Take a short little break here, a 1-minute break. I'll get right back to you. Have a nice one. Dr. Fred David here. Appreciate it. Goodbye.